Hey there, this is lucius.lafromboise from ENG Suite, and today we are starting a little bit more of an advanced tutorial on how to use VBA to make sort of a monthly reporting workbook. Now, in the past, I've worked with a few companies in healthcare and just helping management be able to run quick monthly reporting. Worked with a few companies. They do basically the same thing. So I figured this is probably something that a lot of people are looking for and just don't really know where to start. So this is going to be a longer video chopped up into the smaller parts so that whatever part you need, you can just watch that. Okay, so the data that I'm using here is from a research paper on hummingbirds in California going to hummingbird feeders, and they tagged them with small little tags, and each hummingbird has an individual identification number. So this is our chart here. We have individual ID numbers, and then we have visitation data. And this, I've already set all of this up to connect the visitation data with the tags, the species, and the sex from this. So we're going to be kind of combining two tables, and then we're going to be writing a visitation report that allows us to change our locations, and then it will spit out a report on each different species and each different then split up into the different sexes, and then the total visits. And this one looks like is a little off. Currently that is not averaged per day. We'll do that later, don't worry. And then we can even check how many individual hummingbirds visited in that month, and then how many returning ones. So like if, let's say you're in a business, instead of hummingbirds, you'll be looking at customers, and maybe you have different customer sectors, different age groups you want to look at, different shifts, whatever section you want to look at, and then we can look at all. And then, you have a couple of different things that you want to measure. So we'll take a look at all of that, then you can change your month and your year. So, all right. Let's move over to a new workbook and get into it. All right, here we are in our blank workbook. If you want, you can download the completed workbook. There will be a link in the description. And that workbook will have all of the VBA code. So if you don't want to be typing all of these functions we're going to use, you can go ahead and just use them. But I really think this is good practice, especially because you're probably going to do things a little bit differently. So it's good to understand how these functions work. So we're already set up. You can do whatever you want. Like I said, this species is how we're doing it. But if you wanted, you could break this up into different shifts, into different customer segments, whatever organization, however you identify different customers or jobs, whatever you're looking at here, your main. And then like here, we're taking a look at subgroups within that over here. So whatever your main groups are, we are doing species. So this is our raw visitation data. We get a date, time, a location, a tag, and we actually don't have, yes, we do have a tag hex. So we get the date, time, location, the tag hex, and then the longitude and the latitude. So what we want to do is we want to use this tag hex to figure out the sex of our hummingbirds and the species. So we have this wonderful hummingbird tag info table here. And we'll see we have the tag hex here, and that's associated with the species, the age, and the sex. So we just want to pull the species and the sex based on the tag. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a table. My table has headers, because that means now we only have to type in the formula once and it auto fills. So in here we're going to use XLOOKUP, so we can look up our tag hex in an array, so hummingbird, and I'm actually going to use table 1, which is this table, and I want to get from tag hex. So that allows me, because we're using tables, to search in that. So if we add any hummingbirds to our tag info table, it will automatically search in there. Okay, so our return array. Our return array is going to be on that same table 1, and it is going to be sex because we're pulling the sex. Okay, so now what we're doing is we're looking for the tag hex in the tag hex column of this table, and then we're returning the matching sex. If we don't find it, we're going to return unknown. All right, and there we go. Now if we hit enter, let it load a second because we've got quite a bit of data. Now let's take a look. So 3d6, 1d5, 9, and it is a male, and we should see that it is an Anna's hummingbird. So unselect. All right, let's go back in here, and we're going to do the same thing here. So we'll do X lookup, and we want to search for this tag, and we're going to search in table 1, and we're going to search the column tag hex, and we are going to return table 1 species. If we don't find it, we will call it unknown. And remember, this should be, yep, this one here, 3DEF, Anna's hummingbird. All right, awesome. So I'm just going to save that. So now we have our visitation data, and we've sorted through with the hummingbird tag because these hummingbirds might show up multiple times, and we're actually going to be able to test that in a bit. But now that we have our table set up, we can actually start to learn the report. So the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to make those drop downs. And to do a drop down, we're going to go into data, and we need to find, let's see here, we are looking for the validation. So data validation, and we want to do a list. Now the source for our list, I want the entire column of C, so the entire location column, because we might be adding in more data. So all I have to do is type in C:C and hit enter. And now it gives me these options, location, B1, B2. Just make sure you don't select location because it is just the name of that column. Okay, so now that we have location, now we are going to do month. But you'll see here, there's no way we can pull a list of months. So first I need to create a new row, a new column in our table here. And then we'll do another one because we're going to need to do the year as well. All right, so first here, we'll name this one month, and then we will name this one year. Now it's pretty easy to get the month out of a date. We just type in month and select our date. And now we have extracted the month out of all of those dates, and the same thing here for year. All right, go ahead and save that. See here, these tables and the remote working here is taking a little time, so each time I save it, it might take a little bit of loading. Okay, so now that we've got that, we can come back into our report and data validation for month. We will do in here list, source, visitation data, and month is BB. And so you might have noticed that the data validation did move from C to E on the location. Excel handles that for us. And then any value we want to change to list. Now we're doing our year, which is now in C. C, enter, and there we can select any of our locations, any of our months, and any of our years. Okay, so 1900, we must have here. Aha. So when I made that table, it went all the way down to the very bottom. Gonna delete all of that. All right, got that cleared up. So now we have in the years just 27 and 2018. Okay, so something else that we're going to want to do here is we're going to want to be able to choose any location, any month, and any year. So we're going to insert a new one. And in our month, we're going to type in any. In our year, we're going to type in any. And then in our location, any. And then we're going to delete these so that they're blank. All right. And then we can get rid of that because inconsistent formula. We can just ignore that. And now when we come back here, we now have the any option. Awesome. So now that we have our filters created, now we're going to want to do our species. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to use unique. And the reason I'm using unique is I want to pull out all of the unique species in this list. So here I'm going to select, here's what I can do. Table 3 is this table here. You can see because now it's highlighted. And I'm going to select species. And then there we go. So what unique does is it returns an array of all of the unique values in that. Okay, so if I come here, I'm going to say any. So the species that we have available to us are any, unknown, Anna's hummingbird, Alan's hummingbird, and Rufus hummingbird. So if we come in here, let's just take a look. Looks like we're missing a few. Hybrid and BCHU. The good thing is in here, you know what? Let's change that actually. So instead of pulling from table 3 species, let's pull from table 1 because now that gives us Anna's, Alan's hybrid and Rufus and then the BC. And the nice thing about those hybrid and BC is we might end up with that data someday. You can pull from visitation, but in this case, that's what I'm doing. Again, do this as you would like to do it. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say, oops, any. Okay. And this one, again, when I made that table, it looks like it filled all the way down to the bottom. So I'm just going to delete those cells, delete table rows. That way now we should, in here, get rid of the 0. Awesome. And then the only thing we want to do here is probably also add an unknown. Because now, and we will do them in a different order here. Unknown and any. So now in our report, we have unknown any because unique pulls them in the order that it sees them. Okay, awesome. Go ahead and save that. So we've got our filters done with the data validation, and we have all of our species groups. Now we need to figure out the average visits per day, and this is where we get into VBA. So average visits per day, we're first going to be calculating the total and then dividing it by the number of days in that month. So we might actually just start over here. Okay, so in that case, let's do this. Total visits. There. That might be make a little more sense. So first we'll do our total visits, then our average visits per day. Okay, so how we're going to do this is let's do some mock data here. Data with arrays. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to come in here and we need to filter through all of our tags that match our criteria. And the best way to do that is with filter. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to check the location, we're going to check the month, and then we're going to check the year. And then once we know that it's the correct location, month, and year, then we can start adding in the other the other conditions like species, like male and female, like individual hummingbirds. So how you would do this is we are going to say our table 1, and then we want to check our location, not ID, sorry, table 3, because table 3 is our visitation data. So our visitation table, and we're going to take our location, and we're going to say equals location. enter, false. They should all be false. Let's check. If I put filter on, I can take a look in here, and yes, they're all false. That's because our location is empty. So now let's say B1. We find that we have some trues and we have some falses. So that's good because we know that we have any B1 and B2. Okay, so this looks pretty good. Now we want to do the month. Well, that's pretty easy too. We take that same visitation data table, and now we're just going to take month equals our month here. Awesome. Now if we go here, again, we should see all false, but that's all right because if we select that, we now have some in month 12, and we have some in month 2. Yep, looks good. Okay, same thing with year. So again, that same table, and now we're going to take our year column equals the year, and we're going to filter them all so that maybe we can see them a little bit better, and we have false. Okay, so now it's because it's empty, 2017, and you can see we have some true values. If we go to 2018, the true values move, but they're still there. Okay, awesome. So now we know that the location, the month, and the year are correct. So now what we're going to do is we're going to say hummingbirds. You know what? We are instead going to do and column. So what we need to now do is check to make sure that these are all true. So we'll do and we'll do each of these. So if all of those are true, we'll get a true here. So like this is true, but these are false, so it's false. And we see here, okay, true, true, true gives us true. That means that whatever tag is in this location is number, whatever that would be here. Let's see, 67. So if we come in here, visitation, and we come down probably to about 68. 66. Okay, we come down to 69 here. We see it as B1, 2018 2, and we are checking for 2018 and location B1. Perfect. So it is working. Now we're going to have Excel do all of that for us. So using this and column, these conditions, we're going to filter. And we're going to use the filter function, and our array is going to be table 3. And we're going to select the tag hex. And the reason we're going to do that is because then we can use the unique function to actually count the individual hummingbirds that come to the feeder. Okay, so now in here, include. With this, we pass in an array, and it returns whatever index is true. So like the 67th index of the array was true, it will return the 67th value in that array. So here we go. We take this whole column all the way down, enter. And there we go. These are the hummingbirds that interacted with the feeder that in February of 2018 at location B1. Okay, so that's great. Now to get our total hummingbirds visited, we just do count. But you'll notice we get 0 because count counts numbers, so count A. So we had 194 total visits of any hummingbird species at location B1 in February of 2018. Okay, that is super cool. But we want to actually put these in here and start using this, and we don't want a ton of extras. So we're going to have to start doing some calculations here to finish this up. So what we're going to want to do, the first thing we should probably work on is a function that combines arrays and performs the AND function on all of them. Because if you were to just say do this, and we take that, and we take D19, and oh, I guess that's not working here. we take D19, and we take E19. It just gives us false because it condenses that all down into one cell. So we want something that's going to check all of each index, for each array, and then return whether or not it is each of them in that index is true. So I'm going to save here, and then let's go into VBA. So I've already got a module. If you don't know how to make modules, go ahead and check some of our other videos on how to do that. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a public function called AndArray. All right, so the first thing that we're going to do is we want to return this as a variant because we're returning an array. And we want to take in array 1, array 2. Okay, so you know what, let's just go right for it. So this is something I should probably make an individual video on, but what we're going to do is we're going to pass in, so kind of like on the sum function, you can put a number 1, number 2, ... We're going to do something similar. So in here we're going to say param array, and we're going to call this arrays as variant. So what this means is we can pass in multiple arrays separately as separate separate arguments, and they're each going to be treated individually, so that you can compare 2 arrays, 3 arrays, 4 arrays, I think all the way up to 30. It's not unlimited. There is a set size, but hopefully if you're running these reports, you don't get up that high. If so, stack the AND arrays. Okay, but we want to return an array. So the first thing we should do is dimension return array as variant. Okay, and now we need the cell count. So the cell count is kind of difficult because there's a couple of ways we can do this, but the way that works, whether you pass in a range or an array, is if we just do cell count equals 0. And then for each cell in arrays 0, next. So what we're taking is we're taking that first array we pass in because we know it exists, and we're going to loop through every single value in that array, and we're just going to count equals cell count plus 1. We're just going to increment our cell count. So at the end, we'll have the cell count of that array, so the number of true false values that we pass in. That means we can redimension our return array, and we're going to redimension it cell count minus 1 because these other arrays are going to be 1 based. We want to return 0 based so that if we decided to return it into a cell, there isn't an empty cell at the top. And then the cell count just means that, so like if you have 10 values, you have from 0 to 9, which is 10 values, versus 0 to 10, which would actually be 11. So it's just a 0 basing modification. And then we want to make sure that we make it a 2-dimensional array with 0. So it's technically a 1-dimensional array, but we've specified the width, and that allows us to return them as a column. So that, just like those other functions here, we return them as a column, and we can get a really good view. Okay, so now that we have redimensioned our return array, we're going to fill it with true values. So for I equals 0 to cell count minus 1, we're going to say return array of I 0 equals true. So we're going to go through every single index and element in that array, and we're going to set it to true, because what we want to make sure is that it starts true, and when we loop through our other arrays, if we see a false value in that index, we can just flip it to false. So I'll explain that as we do this, I guess. So for each A in arrays, so we're going to take a look at each array in that param array of arrays. we're going to say I equals 0. Then for each cell in A, so for every value in that array, this is where we check. We say if not cell, then. So what we're doing here is we're saying, okay, if this cell is false, and we use not because rather than saying if cell equals false, we want to use not cell because 0 is also false. So we're trying to match the AND function as much as possible. So by using not, it converts cell into a Boolean. So if it's false, then return array of I0 equals false. Then we can do I equals I plus 1. So because we put this all on one line, that is self-contained, and then we always add 1. So if not cell, then we set it to false, and that's why we set it to true, so that if they're all true, nothing happens and it stays true. If even one of those at that index is false, then we return false. Then and array equals return array. All right, let's go ahead and save that, and let's check it out. All right, so now we're going to come in here, and we want to do and array. Let's go back in here and wonder why. The reporting example, public function and array, end function. Got it. I have to create a module. I wasn't actually in a module, I was in this workbook. So now if I come in here and I put it in the module, we say equals and array, and then we can put in the first array, and we know that the next one is D19 pound, and then E19 pound, and close it, and we hit enter, and look at that, we have now returned true whenever they're all true. If even one of them is false, which we see here, we get a false value. Okay, so our AND array works, and we still get the same value for our filter. So now what we can do here is we can actually hook this all up into a single column. So let's start here, and let's do equals, and we will say count A, and we're going to filter. And our filter array is still going to be table 3, tag hex, and include is and array. Our first one is going to be table 3 location equals, and we're going to say location. I'm going to absolute reference that because eventually we're going to want to drag everything over. Then we're going to say table 3, and we're going to do month equals our month, F4 to absolute reference, table 3, and we're going to do year equals C4, F4 that to absolute reference, and close up our parentheses, and we get 194. Okay, that is super cool. If we want to add on the species, that's pretty easy. I'm just going to copy this all and paste it here. We just add another and array. Include. Yep, I'm in the and array function, and I just say that our table 3 species equals that species there. I'm going to absolute reference the column because, again, we're going to be dragging this over. I hit enter, and I say 162. So 162 out of the 194 hummingbirds visits. Not hummingbirds, but hummingbird visits were in Anna's hummingbird. So if I drag this down, we can then see that one was an Allen's hummingbird, one was a hybrid, one was Rufus, one was BCHU, and one was 8. So now let's do sum. Just make sure this all lines up. 197. Okay, that's interesting. Well, that would be because our Allen's hummingbird, hybrid, and BCHU are both counting 1 when we come in here. And if we look at our species, we know we don't have those. So we need to figure out where we are going wrong. So let's come down here, and I'm just going to set and table 3 species equals, and we'll just look for an Allen's hummingbird. Enter. Okay. We come in here. We will filter. I'm pretty sure we don't have a single true value, and we do not. So I'm going to copy this and plug it in right down here. We see we're still getting 1. If we take off the count A, yes. Okay. What's happening is when the filter is given all false values, it returns a calc error. I forgot about this. So if you give it all false, it gives you calc, which means that count A counts calc as a value. So we need to create a count function that skips over those errors. Okay, so now what we need to do is create our public function, and we'll call this one count values. And we're going to pass in a value array. And what we're going to do here is we're going to use a little bit of a sneaky trick. So we're actually going to try to throw an error if the value is just a single value. So on error, go to return 0. So that now when we count our values, so we'll say count values equals ubound value array. Okay, so count values, value array, and then exit function. So if we just have a hashtag calc value being passed in, it's not going to be able to ubound it. So then instead, we are going to be able to use the return 0 tag, and we say count values equals 0. Okay, it's a pretty short and simple function, but it kind of exploits the fact that we don't need to be super incredibly awesome with certain things. So now what we'll do is run count values, and we get the same thing. But watch what happens when we get our Allen's hummingbird. We get a 0 now. We'll drag it all the way down. We'll still leave the any, and you can see now we have 194. Okay, awesome. So we could be done here. But I don't like the fact that we have to leave out the species on any, and it really doesn't help us if we change this to any. We now get 0 for everything. So that means we're going to have to do something a little bit different. Okay, and so again, sadly, we are going to have to create our own function and messy things up a little bit. So what this next one is going to do, it's going to be like an if for arrays. And that is actually what we're going to call it. So this one we are going to call function if array. And here we're going to say values array. And then we're going to pass in value to check. Okay, so we're going to send in a values array, and then we're going to check against this value. Okay, and so how it works is, we're going to again kind of loop through everything. So first thing that we need to do is we need to figure out how many values we have so we can create our return array as variant. But this gets a little tricky, and we're going to try to do something. We're going to try to use that little exploit again of setting cell count equal to 0, and then for each cell in values array next. Then we do cell count equals cell count plus 1. Okay, so now we should have our cell count, and we can redim our return array. And this time we're going to say cell count minus 1, and 0 again. Okay, so now we've created our return array. And what we first want to check is if that value to check is any, then we want to just return true because we don't care, right? So we're going to say if, and we're going to use uCase. And that what that does is it turns the string into uppercase. So we're going to say value to check equals any. Then we're going to say for I equals 0 to cell count minus 1. And I want to change that L there. Then next, and we're going to say return array of I0 equals true. So we just return a full array of trues, and then we're going to exit our function. Actually, we don't have to do that. Never mind. Then we'll say else and if, and then down here we're going to set if array equal to return array. Okay, because the only other place we would be modifying our array is going to be in this else. So now what we're going to do is we're going to set I equal to 0. And we're going to say for each v in value array next. And what we're going to say is if v equals value to check, then return array of I0 equals true. Else, return array at that index equals false. So if it's true, if they're the same, then it's true. If it's not, then false. Then we end if, and we say I equals I plus 1. All right, and that should do it for us because we have now set both of them. Let's go ahead and save and come in here. And now instead, let's use if array. We set our location and we want to make sure it's equal to C2. And we have a value error. Let's come in here and let's find out why. Let's debug.print here. I'm pretty sure I know where it is. Generally, it's going to be in this finding the cell count that we throw errors in something like this. If we come in here, we see we have both of them. Let's see. So I'm guessing, let's try this. Control A, backspace. We know we don't have any, so we're probably in here. And let's try this. Debug.print v. Let's just see if we are running through them. Okay, we're not even getting there. Okay, still looking good. Got it. Values array. I said value array. All right, come back in here. Boom, and there we go. Wow. Okay, make sure you're typing everything correctly. Okay, so now we have that. But what happens if we check any? Well, good news, we have all of the trues. Okay, awesome. So now we can move on here, and we can start to actually work on this. So we can replace all of those, and that's going to take a little bit. So I guess we'll just go right here, and we will say if array, get rid of the equals, comma, close parentheses. If array, replace the equals with a comma, parentheses. If array, get rid of the equals, comma, and then if array, place the equals with a comma, close parentheses, and that is not good. It's because our location is any. Let's go back here. And there we go. Okay, awesome. So now we have it working. Save that. So now what we have is we can change our location, month, and year, and we will get the number of visits based on species, and we can even go all the way to specifying any on any of these individually or all of them together. Okay, so now average visits per day. What we're going to do is we're going to take this number and divide it by the number of days in the selected month. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to create a function for that. So in VBA, we are going to say public function, and we'll call it days in month. And we will have you pass in a month. And now what we're going to say is we're going to say days array equals, and in here we're going to put in the number of days. So January is 31, February is 28, March is 31, April is 30, May is 31, June is 30, July, August, September, October, November, December. Let's see here. I think we just have to put in array. Perfect. And then days in month equals array of month minus 1. Because what happens is if you pass in the month as 1, it returns the 0 index. So that's kind of cool. And now if we come back out here, and let's just do a test, equals days in month, and we put in 2, we get not 1. Days in month, we get 1. Array. We want a days array. Days array. You probably already caught that. We should get 28. If we change this to 12, we should get 31. Perfect. All right. Going back to February. Okay. So now what we can do is let's just drag that over. And those are giving us some trouble. So let's just do this. Equals, and we paste that. And now we just go to the very back and we divide it by days in month. And we choose our month, F4 to absolute reference. And there we go. Now we have the average visits per day to the feeder for each individual species. Okay, now let's say we want to do this with the females. So we'll just copy it. And you can do this with any condition you want. It's just a matter of coming in here and after your last or anywhere in that AND array, putting in another condition. So we use if array, and this time we'll take our table 3 and we will say sex, and our condition is going to be F, because we want to make sure, because the females are labeled with an F, the males with an M, and if we hit enter, we get 2.35. If we drop that down, and then what we'll do here is we will copy that, paste it, and then just change the sex to an M. And these values should add up to that value. Perfect. All right. Total individual hummingbirds. Now, that's going to be slightly different, but not too bad. So again, let's just copy this and paste it. Okay, so we have our filter, and that gives us all of the tags. So it returns all of the tags that meet this criteria: the correct location, month, year, and species. So what we can do then is, before we count our values, if we run unique, it's going to return an array of all of the unique tags, which gives us 8 individual hummingbirds, making up the 162 total visits. So that's pretty cool. If we wanted, we could even add a column that's average visits per hummingbird. It's just 160 divided by 8, so like 20. But what I'm more curious about is the number of hummingbirds that return, and you probably are too. If you're looking at customer visitation data, you probably want to make sure, how many of our customers are returning, because then you'll know how many of your customers aren't returning. That's generally a key metric for a lot of companies. So what we're going to do here is we're going to have to create a new function. And I wish it wasn't so, but we're trying to do all of this. By the way, this stuff down here, totally don't even need that. We're now totally in this little table here. So let's go in here. And what we need is a function that's going to count each of the tags that show up more than once. So we'll say public function, and we'll call it count with duplicates. All right, and we will say values array. So we're going to pass in our value array, and we are going to count every single one that has a duplicate. Okay, so this gets a little bit kind of like that last one, kind of weird, because if we have a filter return nothing, we have to return 0. So we do go to return 0, and then return 0, and then we will say count with duplicates equals 0. Okay, which means we're going to need another exit function here. Okay, so now the meat of the actual function. So we're going to have an index, an indicator. So DI, that's going to be the value that we're actually counting. That's the number of duplicates. Now we're going to create another variable called unique string, and we're going to do another called duplicate string. And they're just empty. So what we're going to do is we need to loop through for each value in values array. We need to check one thing first. First, we want to say if in string 1, and we're going to say duplicate string, and we're going to search v. Okay, is equals 0. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're going to check if if the tag is in our duplicate string, then that means, unique string. If v is in unique string, we know that the value has already been found. It's not a unique value. Then we can count it as a duplicate. But if we don't see it in the unique string, that means it's the first time or the only time we've come across it. So then we can add it to the unique string. Equals unique string plus v. So we're going to add on that tag, and then we're going to add just a separator. And I just do this so that when debugging, it's a little bit easier, so that we don't, just in case, this separator, you know what, let's do a comma. We know we aren't using commas in the tags. Just some way as making individual tags in case 2 tags merged together creates a tag, right? We want that comma in there to separate. You can choose any separating delimiter you want. But okay, so let's say it is in our unique string, because in string, if it doesn't find the value in that string, it returns 0. But if it does, it gives you the index of wherever that is. Now we don't care about the index, but we do care that it found it. So if we find it, then we want to check if in string. So again, we're going to check starting at the beginning if our duplicate string contains that value. And if it's equal to 0, then we know that it is not. So if the duplicate string contains v, if the duplicate string doesn't contain v, then we know we found it once before, and this is our second time seeing it, which means we haven't counted it. So we can say di equals di plus 1. So now we've added the thing we found to the duplicate string, and now we can say duplicate string equals duplicate string plus v plus comma. So again, if we find it in the unique string and the duplicate string, we've counted it, and we don't want to count it again. So that's how we count our duplicates. And then all we do is we just say count with duplicates equals di. Let's go ahead and save that. So now what I'm going to do is copy this, paste that, and instead of count values, we are going to get rid of unique, because we don't want, if we pull unique, it's only going to pull each one once. So now with the 162, we're counting the values, but we want to count with duplicates instead. And now we see that 6 out of our 8 hummingbirds showed up more than once. That means 2 of our hummingbirds only came to the feeder one time in that time period. And it looks like, wow, that one Rufus, those 24 visits, that was all one hummingbird, and she was a female. It looks like our unknown hummingbirds, that was all one hummingbird as well. Because it's unknown, we also don't know the species, the sex, we don't know the species. And then for any, we had a total of only 10 hummingbirds, and that checks out 811. And then 8 of our hummingbirds returned. So only 2 of our hummingbirds never came back, and they were both Hannah's hummingbirds, and that was in February of 2018. Okay, so one more thing before we go. It's not that big of a deal, but I just want to put on a title. So in here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say concat, because that's going to allow us to write a title that reflects these filters. And I want to call my table visitation report for location, and I want to actually add a space there, location B1, and date what we want to do here is we want to return our month and return our year. So visitation report location for B1 and date 2018. But I don't like 2018. I do want it to say February. So let's copy our days in month, and we will say month to text. So now I'm going to call this January, February, March, April, May, June, August, November, December. Save that. Now if I come back in here and I change that to month to text. I wonder why I'm throwing an error there. No, I said month to text. Got it. Forgot to set it equal that one down there. So make sure you change both instances of the name. And now you have for February 2018. Awesome. I hope this really helped you make those functions, that AND array, if array, count values. Those are really going to be the helpful functions from this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I do love to help. One thing we do is custom Excel VBA work and JavaScripting for Excel. So if you are interested in this stuff and you don't have the time to learn it, give us a call. But if you just got a few questions, we're happy to do that at no cost. Because truly, if you work better, that makes the world better. So as always, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and please do something awesome.